kingdom of heaven was a topic of discussion between a close friend of mine at seminary, where I was trained to be a priest for many years. I never brought the conversation up. He would always say to me, "James, imagine what heaven's going to be like when we get there. Imagine what heaven's like." And I must admit, it was one of those conversations which I never could really get into. I'd kind of shrug my shoulders and say, I don't know what it's going to be like. It was hard to imagine. And I think what I found hard to imagine about it was that I couldn't feel it, I couldn't see it. It was something which goes beyond my experience. And all that we had as pictures of what was called the beatific vision, the vision of heaven, were a bit like this. You had like strongly muscled men, I have no muscles, looking up to heaven and just staring at God. But the thing is, God was always out of the picture. It was always a gaze of the eyes to something that I couldn't see. It was outside the realm of my experience. So when it came to discussing heaven, I really had no clue. I know I want to go to heaven when I die, but if you ask me to describe what it looks like and feels like with ideas, I haven't got any. But luckily, Jesus never uses ideas or ideals to describe heaven. He always uses flesh and blood examples, things that we can all relate to. And he always says the kingdom of heaven is like. And then he describes something that we all know and love, because in this case, who doesn't love food? Every time I hear Jesus describe a banquet, I get hungry. And I think, if heaven's the fulfilling of my belly, then I'm already in heaven, because I do that every day. So what does he do? He says the kingdom of heaven is like a banquet that a king threw for his son's wedding party. Now, for those of us who've been to weddings, who celebrated that joyful day, the meal is the fulfillment of a joyful occasion which is already well underway. A man and a woman united in love forever by a promise to one another. And the food reflects that, the fellowship, the friendship, and the fun. That's what Jesus is describing when he describes heaven. Something which brings us together, which unites us in love around the pleasures, the joyful pleasures of life lived here and now. Jesus is saying heaven will be an extension and a fulfillment of that, a joyful occasion. And then he describes a scenario here of how we can turn down that gift, because he describes a scenario of a king who invited his friends to a wedding banquet and they rejected that invitation. The king is inviting people to a free gift, to a banquet which is not of their own making, but of his, a feast of joy and of love. And they all turn it away for the following interesting reasons. The first one says, "No, I've got a farm that I need to be working on." So he goes back to his farm. Another one says, "I've got a business that needs looking after. I'll look after that, thank you," and turns down the invite. And then the third group of people says, not just "we don't want your invite," but they maltreat, they humiliate physically the servants who've been sending the message, and then kill them. Land is food. Business, money. Abuse, sex, murder, power. The four vices of humanity. The four attempts to grab the pleasures of life for ourselves rather than receive them from God. It is the sin as old as humanity, where we take what God wants to give us freely to make our own, and in doing so, disconnect ourselves from the source of life, which is God. And notice the king's response. He doesn't say, "Oh, well, no one's coming to my wedding banquet." He sends out troops to destroy who he describes as murderers. Not just the murderers who killed his servants, but everyone who chooses money, sex and power over God. Anyone who tries to make their own version of heaven over the heaven that he wants to give us. He destroys them. But he also testifies to the fact that an attempt to grab heaven for ourselves by rejecting God also has damaging effects for other people as well as ourselves. It cuts us off from the life of God, and also takes people away from God too. Because then he says to these same people, to the hosts, "Go out to the wayside of the town which has just been destroyed and pick up the waifs and the strays, the survivors, those who are living the damage of the people's sin, and bring them into the wedding banquet, so that I may console them and they may be the beneficiaries of my love, of my free gift of mercy. That is the heaven that he's inviting all of us and warning us not to reject a free gift of love. For in so doing, by rejecting God's offer of heaven, which is the fulfillment of all the pleasures that we seek in life, all the joys that we seek in life, if we try to go alone by ourselves, we won't reach that fulfillment. What is this heaven he's describing? It definitely isn't the absence of pain, because heaven is bought for those people who come to the wedding banquet second at the expense of pain. And that's where the first reading can help us, because here Isaiah is describing his version of heaven, the version that God gave him in his prophecy. He says, "On this mountain the Lord will prepare a banquet of rich, fine wines, of finely strained wines, and the best food." So again, it's food. It relates to our lives lived here on earth. It's the fulfillment of those things we seek in life, but at their fullness. But at what expense? Where do we get wine from? From strained grapes, from pruned vines. Do you remember the pruned vines of last week? For a vine to grow, it must be cut back so that it may flourish. The finest wine is bought at the expense of pain and of suffering, of sacrifice in life. And then he talks about taking away the mourning veil of suffering from people's heads. He doesn't take away the suffering which has made them mourn, but rather remove the veil, so at this wedding feast we may know God face to face. So we can enter into a loving relationship with him, a relationship which doesn't take away our history, doesn't take away our past, doesn't anaesthetize us from the pain of life, but rather brings us to healing in his reconciling love. And then he talks about wiping away the tear from people's eyes. That doesn't mean taking away their crying. It means his love will console us. Because heaven in life is always bought through passion. Jesus' cross is testimony to that. Our God, who is heaven himself, descended from heaven to share in our life in the flesh, so that he may bring that life at the price of his passion to the glory of heaven. He rose from the dead in the body, but that body was the body that was crucified. This is the gateway to our salvation. This is the gateway to heaven. This is the fulfillment of all that we long for. We don't long for lofty ideas and ideals. We long for human fulfillment, for reconciliation, for acceptance in our weakness, and for love and forgiveness of our sins. And all of that is bought in the passion of Jesus. And that is how heaven is lived out among us. Heaven for the Christian, for the redeemed person, begins now. It's not something which, at the end of behaving very well for however many years, we get when we die. If it's not begun now, if it's not begun in our own fellowship with one another, if we aren't banqueting together from the feast of God's love, if we aren't seeking reconciliation with one another through our pains and through our sorrows, then we're not on the road to heaven. God came down from heaven. Heaven came to earth to share in our sufferings. And only through sharing our sufferings with him, by accepting his free gift of love, do we participate in the joy and the glory of his resurrection. Now, I was going to talk, this was meant to be talk 3 of a vision for the parish and how we're going to address the structures of our parish so that it may better meet the needs of our mission of evangelisation, of making disciples of all people. But until we can come to understand that heaven begins in our capacity to be reconciled, in our capacity to forgive, in our capacity to accept the free gift of God's love, then vision really falls upon the rocks. At this Mass, we consume the body and blood of Christ. The body and blood of Christ, which was consumed by death for us. When we consume that crucified and risen body, we are accepting the invitation for heaven, but also accepting the responsibility which comes with that, to love our brothers and sisters, and to give of ourselves, whatever it may cost us, our passion in love for one another. Amen.